What is up, YouTube? My name's Alex. Welcome back to the Lifting Nomad. Today's video, I want to talk about how safe it is to actually be a digital nomad. I've been traveling alone with a lot of electronics, a lot of expensive shit for the last little while. And a lot of times I see people talking online about, like on Reddit and different posts about how safe and how unsafe it is, and what sort of areas you should avoid, all that jazz. And I just wanted to kind of share my experience with traveling, staying safe, not being an idiot, and yeah. So without further ado, let's get into the video. All right, so when it comes to the actual safety of like traveling, obviously it's going to be very location dependent. I think a lot of people kind of overestimate the news for how actually like sketchy things are. Like for instance, I'm in Mexico City right now, and I was just reading a thread on Reddit talking about how people are like avoiding Mexico as a whole because of like the Sinaloa, like the cartel, and like a lot of just like increased news coverage of violence in Mexico. And it kind of just got me thinking how ignorant, I guess, some people are to the concept of like the size of a country. Like Mexico, in terms of land size, is pretty huge, right? Like you look at where Cancun or Tulum or Playa del Carmen are, like anything over there, all the way over to like Puerto Vallarta or Sinaloa on the far coast. That's a long ways away. It's kind of like being in the US and seeing I don't know, something like an earthquake maybe in California, and you're in like New York and being like, I'm nervous of this earthquake. And it's like, well, it's not really near you, kind of thing. So it's all about relativity, I think, and looking at where you are on the like a global scale and what sort of countries you're in. And then obviously there's going to be more innate risks depending on the countries that you're staying in. So if you're like, I don't know, in like Cali, Colombia, which is one of the most dangerous cities and one of the most dangerous countries in South America, you're likely not going to be as safe as you are in, I don't know, like Lisbon, Portugal, right? Something like that. Keep in mind like your risk tolerance and your like comfortability of traveling solo, traveling with expensive stuff as well is also something to consider. Like I'll give you a real example. When I landed in Buenos Aires, Argentina, just after Christmas, I didn't have any Argentinian pesos yet. I was just coming from Miami, and I didn't have any cash. I had USD, I didn't have any pesos. And I got into an Uber to take a trip from Buenos Aires, like the airport, EZE, to downtown to Palermo, where my place was. And I got into the Uber, and my Spanish was like fairly decent, and I understood like what he was talking about. He basically said, I have to pay in cash, even though I had already booked the Uber on my credit card. And reason being, after I looked it up, it turns out like 20% of these Uber drivers don't have bank accounts or something like that, and they won't accept you if you're in a car. The problem was he had already pulled away. So I landed with like, I had a laptop, a computer, all my expensive like clothes, my luggage, my passport, like cash, my phone, my iPad, my AirPods, like, all my valuables. And then he started pulling away and basically said, okay, well, I can cancel the Uber and you can still pay in cash. I didn't really understand what he was saying at that point, but I just said, okay, sure, that's fine. And then so he canceled my Uber. But then I realized I was in basically a stranger's car, not being tracked on any app, in a country about 10,000 kilometers away from home, by myself with all my most expensive shit in it. And then it got even a little bit sketchier because the driver started to go on WhatsApp, and he was like talking, sending voice notes to someone over WhatsApp. And typically that means like, not every time, but that's been a case of where they think they've got an American or someone who doesn't speak English. And they're talking about like, they're just gonna say, hey, I've got someone in my car, I'm gonna be bringing them to where you are. Then like essentially what happens sometimes is they'll take you to a place and they'll rob you and take everything you have because, what are you gonna do? You had canceled Uber, then by the time you get a new phone to dispute it, it's been like, God knows how long, and then they're long gone. You're never gonna find that person again because sometimes they're actually driving on a fake Uber account from someone else's. So they're like, shit like that does happen. And then I realized I wasn't sure if this was going to be one of those cases, but basically I heard him talking about like where he was driving to and where he was currently. So what I did was, at that time we were just leaving the airport. I basically told him, like I went on my phone really quickly and Googled where I was and found that there was like a 5-star hotel just up the street from the airport. And I said to him like, hey, actually I need to stop at this hotel really quickly. You can drop me off here and I'll just pay you in USD cash. And I offered him like $20 USD, which would have been probably double the price that the Uber would have been for that whole trip. And it was only like a 5-minute drive. But at the same time, I knew if he said no to that or something, then it would have been like, you know, for me to like start rolling down the windows and trying to flag down a cop or something, right? And made like a big scene of it. So that was kind of my moment of, okay, let me get out of this and get somewhere where I know, like, first of all, 5 stars hotel in pretty much any country is going to speak English. So I went there, went to the front desk, explained my situation, and the girl was like, you know, super friendly, professional, and she spoke English. And she told me that sometimes it's just how the Uber drivers are in Argentina, where they want you to pay in cash so they don't have to do the fees from Uber. Who knows, maybe I would have got robbed, maybe I wouldn't have, I didn't really know, but either way, it was, you know, my first day in Argentina. I didn't really know what to do, and I was like scared. Right? So I did that. I took the option of going to a hotel. I still had a few hours to kill as well. I was planning on going to a coffee shop near my place, but instead I decided to get breakfast in that lobby. I chatted with the girl at the desk for a while just to like kind of get myself calmed down and get a little bit more comfortable. She recommended I use like a different app called Cabify, which is really popular for locals, which they accept credit card always, and it's just like a little bit more consistent and fast, and also like half the price. So really interesting. So that's like a story of how you can be like, you know, not as safe despite being as intelligent, as smart, and street traveler as, you know, I'm fairly well traveled. I've been to like 35 countries, but stuff like that can just happen. So it's important to understand the risks of where you're going and how to behave in those countries. And then obviously, like, you know, Colombia I think is a good example as well. That's where I first started my digital nomad sort of adventure, and they have an expression there, no dar papaya, like don't give papaya, which basically means like don't give people a reason to rob you. And essentially that's like, you know, keep your phone in your pocket, don't leave it on a table, don't dress like an asshole, like don't wear a Rolex with white pants and like a white flashy button-up shirt that just says rob me, right? Like wear like very, you know, normal sort of fitting clothing. One of my good friends Ian has an expression, the Berlin garb, just like I wear like mostly like black on black when I'm in South America, just because it's easier to blend in and be less noticeable. Of course I'm still not going to blend in everywhere because I'm you know, white, blonde hair, blue eyes, and or I don't look like the people here, I should say. But just being cognizant of how to behave in those countries and doing research on which neighborhoods are safe, which neighborhoods are not safe, things you should and shouldn't do. Like I should have been more proactive on that taxi situation or the Uber situation in Argentina, and known to either get pesos ahead or schedule a car or something a little bit more coordinated than what I did. So that was my like lesson, and I definitely had a little bit of anxiety after I finally got into my place and was trying to learn on all that. But other than that, like really violent crime is extremely rare. Like I mentioned at the beginning of this video, like Mexico and like the Sinaloa cartel and all that. In Latin America, there's cartels in like every single city in some capacity. So being aware of just like, you know, not causing problems, not making a scene, not like doing shit that's gonna get you into trouble. Like don't go looking for drugs, don't go looking for hookers in places where you shouldn't be, that kind of thing. You're generally gonna be okay. No dar papaya. Don't dress like an asshole, keep your phone in your pocket, don't have like a lot of cash on you as well. Like people will also recommend doing things like a burner phone or even like a burner wallet, where like let's say you do get robbed for whatever reason, you're giving someone like, you know, a phone or a wallet, but it's not your like life or death sort of phone or wallet, right? They always recommend like if you work for like a remote company and you need like an authenticator, don't use that on your main phone, buy like a second phone, and then keep that like just in your apartment in your safe with your passport, so you only ever need it when you're like at home working kind of thing. So there is like a lot of tips and tricks you can do to reduce your risk of having an issue while you're traveling. But overall, nothing is bulletproof. I think there's, you know, important piece of humility here to understand that you're never going to be 100% safe, but that's kind of what life is. And that discomfort that I had in Argentina, I think pushed me out of my comfort zone a lot to where I was growing and exploring parts of myself that I wasn't really too familiar with, and definitely helped like build my confidence for moving into the next phase. So that was in December. I'm now into like end of March, and I'm definitely like, you know, infinitely more confident in my ability to navigate new cities, move around, have conversations with people, and be more safe on the ground, given I've already had an experience that I think kind of woke me up. In terms of like true experiences that I've seen or heard of, I've only really ever heard of people getting their like phones stolen. If you like I have seen, and I've in different countries, people get like assaulted a little bit if they don't give their phone up. So another thing that comes to mind there is I saw a story not too long ago about an Airbnb. Someone got to there, and then there's 2 guys just waiting who robbed them at gunpoint to take all their shit as soon as they got to the Airbnb. So make sure like when you're booking Airbnbs, you're doing or wherever you're booking from, you're doing your due diligence to look at the host, look at the reviews from other people, and then look at those accounts too as well, right? If they only have 10 reviews, all of those 10 people are brand new accounts with 1 review, that's kind of a red flag, right? So go through and try and find reputable hosts and take your time and be careful with what you're doing. It isn't a perfect system, but the reality is in this world, like especially if you're American, there's dangers around kind of like every corner. So living in a bubble where you're completely unexposed to any sort of danger or safety concern really isn't that realistic. And at the same time, that kind of growth phase of pushing out of your comfort zone and being somewhere that's a little bit, maybe a little risky, a little uncomfortable, can actually help you in the long run, I think, become a better person. So that's my 2 cents. I just wanted to kind of talk about like my experience, you know, as safety-wise concerns. I think it's well worth the risks and the pros and cons. You know, the pros of it definitely outweigh the cons, even if you do have an issue over the years. I think if you do this lifestyle long enough, you are going to have an issue at some point. It's just kind of inevitable, but how you take it and how you know, kind of move on with the strides is ultimately going to kind of decide who you are as a person. So that's my thought on the topic. This was a little bit more emotional than I usually get, but hopefully this was useful to hear kind of how it is and maybe take off some of those rose-tinted goggles for people who are thinking this is gonna be like a perfect life. It definitely isn't, but you know, for me, it's well worth it. So this is gonna be the video. If it was useful, definitely feel free to leave a like in the comment section below. Always helps the algorithm. But as always, my name's Alex. Welcome back to Lifting Nomad. We'll see you in the next one. Peace.